but I don't want to take time away from Patrick. Um, so thanks for joining us again today for our special case study presentation.
Of course.
Allow me to introduce our guest speaker, Patrick Wallace, who is currently the Digital Projects and Archives Librarian at Middlebury College in Middlebury, Vermont. So Patrick will be just presenting kind of a case study on how he built the digital stewardship program there at Middlebury, and then we'll be available to take your questions. So take it away, Patrick.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm super happy to be here. I love Digital POWRR and the work they do. I'm glad that we have something to contribute. So I guess I'll just jump right in. I have a few slides, so it'll occupy some screen space besides my face. Can you give me sharing permissions, please?
Oh yeah, I just realized that. Let's see here. Okay, you should be good now.
Cool. All right. So first, my email's here. I think you all have it and it should be going out. I want to start by saying feel free anytime to get in touch with me. I love talking with people about this stuff. I love sharing the way we do things. And I find it really gratifying. So do get in contact if you have questions or if you want feedback on anything. So the main thing, I kind of framed it as a bootstrappy way of doing digital collections at Middlebury. We have institutionally, we are a tier 2 liberal arts college. We've been around for a long time. About 375 staff, about 1,800 undergraduate students in Vermont. And then Middlebury also has the Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey, California, which usually I think has around 800 graduate students at any given time. About 1,300 students per year attend Middlebury language schools. Most of those are the summer language schools. They also include schools abroad, and those have a long history. And then we have the Breadloaf School of English and Breadloaf Writers Conference. About 100 graduate students a year are enrolled in BLSE. And then the Writers Conference is an annual summer event that kind of draws writers, poets, playwrights to our Breadloaf campus in Vermont, which is kind of a 40 minutes outside of the main campus up in the mountains. And that has a venerable history from Robert Frost founding it. So our core collection area, so we're a small institution. We're not a big college. We generally have pretty good and stable funding, but we're always really short on labor, and it's not like we get everything we want all the time. So our biggest privilege is our great deal of professional freedom in our roles. Middlebury is really good about, I guess, giving everyone who works there kind of space to do their jobs, in my opinion. In special collections, we have 4 full-time people plus a director. So we have our college archivist and our special collections archivist. The college archivist is in charge of all of our physical collections, and does what a lot of college archivists do. She's our face for the organization after Rebecca, our director. Our special collections archivist shares some of those responsibilities and is the person who primarily does outreach, communications, exhibition planning, and space stuff. Our preservation manager, who knows everything about the physical artifacts, handles working with vendors for digitization, all of that. And then me, Digital Projects and Archives Librarian, and I handle all of anything where having digital in your title would make it your job. We usually have about 4 to 6 undergraduate workers. They work a 10-hour week max, a lot of them less than that. So some of them are 4-hour-a-week workers over the course of a semester. And we have reliable funds for just kind of maintaining basic operations, and the library budget pays for the few paid services that we have for software, but things like digitization, any kind of specialized stuff we need, projects that need a budget, most of that comes from ad hoc funding, sometimes from donors. Sometimes there's money, we have a few endowed collections that we have a little bit every year to spend on. But we don't have like super consistent funding for things like digitization. So cost is important to us. Um, we're our core collection areas: college archives, institutional records. This is runs the gamut, from things like the yearbooks and the newspapers to administrative documentation. And those records go back to, go back to 1800 when the school was founded. So they get very old. We have rare books and manuscripts, and then things that we get with the acquisitions budget that are usually curriculum defined. So the director works with professors to see what they're teaching. We get primary source materials that are of interest for those classes. We get alumni donations. We have some endowed collections. And then we've had a really strong emphasis over the last several years on building student life and broader community collections. So things that really focus on the student life and the student experience, and then things having to do with the local community in Vermont, because our Middlebury it's very much a college town, kind of isolated in New England, and so there's not a clear separation between the institution and the surrounding locale. So when I started at Middlebury in 2015, we had very little for digital content. I replaced I believe a metadata cataloging librarian position with my position. So all we had for digital content at all was a local content DM instance that had a few hundred items in it. Most of these were honors theses, a few faculty papers, and then files from boutique projects. One research project a faculty member did, one partnership with a local historical society to digitize some images and put them up, that kind of thing, but nothing expansive and nothing really, nothing that was like an ongoing collection activity. We had a land storage server, about 0.5 terabyte of miscellaneous stuff, things we'd scanned that we'd saved, ad hoc digitization projects, or the results of them that had just kind of like built up in this file tree over 10 years. Finding aids for those ran the gamut from old Word docs to spreadsheets to whatever. It was very much just a drive with a bunch of stuff on it. We have good computers. They keep us pretty up to date. We have good flatbed scanners. We have all the kind of peripheral interfaces we need for doing one-off digitization of VHS tape, vinyl, not much more than that. What we didn't have was any kind of consistent strategy, workflows, or processes for dealing with digital collections. And we ran into this thing where content DM was going to their cloud-only, hosted-only model, and we had been grandfathered into a local content DM license really early on, and nobody wanted to pay the money. And so we needed to figure out what to do. We went through a long process of looking at different platforms. We had developed an Islandora-based repository in-house for a while. It ended up being used just for faculty preprints and theses, not for special collections stuff. But that was a big project, and we demoed everything we could think of, and everything we could get our hands on. We finally came to an Internet Archive-based strategy for special collections. Because in special collections, we consider ourselves fairly principled. I'll come back to that a few times. And our mission is really to act as a research lab for scholars. We want this to be as open as possible. All of us who work there are pretty radical about the importance of sharing information and of sharing our methods and tools also. We want to minimize the gatekeeping part of our professional activity and maximize the like letting people take advantage of our expertise part. Um, and then in building stuff, especially with regard to like student collections, things like that, we want the history that we are assembling and preserving to be honest, holistic, critical. College archives often provide a rose-tinted view of the institution, especially if they're only passively collecting and getting things that are sent to them by administration or advancement offices. So we definitely take an active collection stance with that respect. We do outreach to student groups. We do actively solicit donations. Um, Donations of content, sorry. Um, and then to support work with other institutions around the region, locale. So our main strategies, principles, looking at what can we provide in this whole realm of digital information, archiving, preservation, access provision that computer scientists aren't giving, that our IT department can't give. What is it that distinguishes us? And it comes down in our mind to two things. One is professional ethics. As librarians and archivists, we work first from a very specific kind of ethical imperative to provide access to information and to, facilitate other people's research and use. And then our emphasis on building corpuses over kind of the communications methods or media themselves. So this is like the curatorial part where what we're really good at is like building stuff for other people to do or for other people to work with. And that all those things should be reflected at every level in our process. The other thing, other main strategy is establishing our professional authority locally. This means saying, hey, we know how to do things like knowledge management and data preservation. You should give that to us. And really, I all credit here goes to Rebecca, our director, for being an awesome diplomat, and being able to get around a tendency in academia for local workplace cultures to kind of promote information siloing. This really becomes explicit in things like open access mandates, where people are worried about research scooping, but it also is just kind of in general. A lot of people, so many of my colleagues, some of them at Middlebury, not in the archives, and definitely elsewhere, worry about, worry more than they probably need to about things like intellectual property concerns when they're sharing archival collections, things like that. So we're less risk averse than a lot of institutions in that way. We're also smaller, so we're not really in the target sites of things. People like copyright trolls in the way that say Harvard or Yale or big institutions might be. And then just being really careful to always look at what we can, in technical processes, what we can reuse, how we can have feedback mechanisms from our users to build out resources, and worry less about producing finished products, by which I mean like exhibitions, digital or otherwise, and focus more on providing quality raw materials, meaning um, we want our digital collections to be as broadly usable to as many types of people for as many types of uses as they can be. That's our first goal. And our goal is to like create this research corpus and put it out there for the world, and less so to um, and to focus more on that than focus on the presentation layer, I guess. And then pay careful attention to what we're spending money on in terms of technology and how we use the labor we have. So over the course of a few years, we've been able to get an open access mandate for faculty publishing across the institution. We have a mandate that all senior administrators and offices do deposits of their email and office documentation when people leave a position. That's for deans, vice presidents, college president, uh, other types of high level administrators. Once they leave their role, I have a process with ITS that I'm able to collect their email, their Outlook calendars, all of that from the time they were in that position. We have one process one branching, mostly modular process for all of our archival content. So from digitization, foreign digital collections, all of it kind of runs through the same set of filters. And then it's been wildly successful for us. I mean, we have seen 100-fold increase in use of our digital collections. We've gone, we routinely get requests from people making documentaries, other researchers from outside to reuse our content in ways that we never did before. We serve as the DPLA service hub for the state of Vermont, and we have been able to really make a lot out of very little, I think. So into the technical side, core toolkit. Almost all of our stuff runs on Google products, Google Drive, Google Sheets mostly, and Microsoft Office. Only because that's what people use Excel on their computers for spreadsheets. We use a like almost totally CSV spreadsheet based workflow technically. I have a Linux workstation I use for a few things. All of our Internet Archive is our repository. That's our public front for all of our digital content. Archive space holds all our finding aids, and then we are absolutely ravenous for storage all the time. Our collections are at about 25 terabytes right now. A big chunk of that being video masters. Applications that we couldn't live without. The Internet Archive command line tool and Python library are big deals for us, especially the command line tool, which is an everyday way of doing bulk uploads and bulk metadata work on stuff in Internet Archive, using CSV, a standard CSV template for metadata. Google Sheets, where we create those templates. Google Forms, which I can detail the actual process. Google Forms help us keep track of everything and also create metadata in the same form or through the same form. Same thing, more spreadsheet software, and we use Dart for some of our dark archives as an easy way to implement Baggett in the dark storage. So primary services, Internet Archive, we use Archive It. We only have a 1/4 terabyte subscription to them, so a fairly small Archive It account. Archive space for the finding aids, and then we've been working a lot with From the Page, which is a crowdsourced transcription service. So for our manuscripts, we use that to get transcriptions for our manuscripts and then reintegrate them into the Internet Archive records. Like I said, we're state service hub for DPLA. Everything gets indexed into our ILS from Internet Archive. Everything from Internet Archive also gets indexed into JSTOR Forum and community collections. For born digital stuff, other things I always use, Outlook is how we get all the email. All of our email exports are directly from Outlook. I can talk about that if people are interested in how we do email archiving. YouTube DL, indispensable, Instaloader, Twerk for Instagram and Twitter respectively, and then the web recorder tools for when I can't figure out how to get things to harvest nicely and archive it, but I want to archive web pages. Indexing to the other kind of catalog services or discovery layer services, JSTOR, EBSCO, DPLA happens automatically from our Internet Archive via OAI-PMH. Some of the ones that have more manual components are From the Page, but we're working on that, but working with From the Page to make an automatic 2-directional transcription from Internet Archive. From the Page can take a IIIF manifest and import stuff from the page from Internet Archive. We're now working on getting the completed transcripts back into the item records in an automated way. Right now, I need to actually download the plain text files from the page and add them to each item. And then we have a system of cross-linking records between Archive Space, Internet Archive, Archive It, mostly with just the Dublin Core related metadata field, putting URLs in, but at least it gives some kind of connection there. How does it work? So if things are digitized, and a lot of our biggest collections are things that have been digitized from the physical archives. So how do we do it? We look at what we have, see what we want to digitize. We really carefully figure out what metadata do we have and what's implicit. So what box numbers are important. The organization of the physical collection is insofar as we can get implicit organizational or structural information about how everything fits together from that. We try to record it. File names are at the center of our way of dealing with digital collections, because we give vendors or our student workers, if they're doing it in-house, really specific frameworks for how to create file names so that they can be easily broken up in Excel. Basically, we structure them to make them so there's a, say, for a letter, there would be an author name, a date, a sequence number if there's a sequence number, but this is really practical stuff in terms of separating them with underscores or hyphens in different places so that simple find and replace type of operations can break everything up and give you some basic metadata. Everything gets sent out by our preservation manager to a vendor. And then when we receive stuff back, there's a Google form. It's the same form if we scan something as a one-off in-house to fulfill a request. That gives me a link to where the stuff is actually being held in a temporary storage. Any notes that the college archivist or preservation manager or anybody else thinks are important for the curation, and then any kind of known metadata or links to finding aids, or just it's a way of them saying, here are the files, here is all the documentation that we have for these files or their contents. It puts it in one place and it gives us an inventory and a work log of what we've been dealing with, what we've received. So I look at the form, I make a basic README file with any kind of notes, like, notes on embargoing, this can't be public for 10 years, that kind of thing. And history of where it came from, donated by so-and-so. That all goes in just a basic readme.txt file. Everything gets put into our canonical dark storage server that I've referred to, which is just, it appears to us as a network drive. In fact, it's our ITS provided, I think it's a Microsoft cloud storage. But IT handles security, handles redundant backups, all that. So it's safe enough, and it's where we can all work. So everything, our canonical storage is there. And then mostly depending on what we're working with, it goes into at least one other file store, but those are broken up between Google Drive and Microsoft SharePoint. Then we update in archive space records with that canonical storage location. So just where it is in the file system. Then I start working on the preservation and access part. And the workflow divides based on one rule. Can we share it or can't we? We don't really have an in-between. We don't do any kind of short-term embargoes. We do, as far as things that would be restricted to on-campus use only, we say it doesn't matter. It's the same for digital stuff as physical stuff. So if we restrict things to on-campus, they can be accessed on campus. Either through we put it on we'll share it via like Google Drive, or we'll share it via OneDrive for specific people or people with Middlebury.edu logins when it's requested. Other than that, it just lives in our secure storage. If we can share things, and like I said, we're pretty liberal with doing that. We do it whenever possible. Then they go to Internet Archive, and Internet Archive becomes our repository and our preservation engine, really. So we take all the metadata we can find, we make a spreadsheet from that Internet Archive uploader template, we reconcile known metadata from other finding aids, whatever we have, what comes in the Google form, add that to the spreadsheet in bulk. And then either me or student workers on projects will create per item descriptive metadata, check it all out, upload it to Internet Archive, take that metadata spreadsheet or however many were used, timestamp them, put them into the canonical storage location, and then add the URL to the item pages in archive space or to a search that will, display all the appropriate records in an archive space record. That's it. And I'll stop sharing since I'm out of slides. But that's our core way of doing things. Huge benefits I've seen is the working with only CSV files, first of all, and keeping these kinds of super simple standards. Everybody knows how to work a spreadsheet, at least in the university environment. It's very flexible when it comes to, if I have a student working on something, rather than have an interface that they need to learn, have a bunch of fields or options that they don't need to use, I can do things like we're assigning subject headings to a set of images. There's one column that gives an identifier for the image, and then there's another column that says keywords. That's all they have to see. There's no confusion. And then once they do that, I can just paste those columns from one place to the other. We don't have huge collections. I don't know how this would scale if we had millions of items that we were working with. Right now in Internet Archive, we have something like 35,000 things uploaded. And we have, hundreds of thousands in the dark archive that we're working on. We have a big backlog, but it has allowed us to really push stuff fast. It works great for big batch projects where we don't have detailed metadata for things that are pretty uniform. So periodicals like our campus newspapers, where that was the thing that digitization costs and time on it was so much more than actually making it live and getting it into Internet Archive. Those types of projects where it's just nothing really has a lot of unique descriptive metadata work on it, where there's manual keying, that kind of thing. The time from when I get the files to when they're all up is mostly limited by my literal connection bandwidth. Working from home on a fiber connection, I get about 800 gigabits a second upload speed, and it can take some days to, push that big college newspaper scan set or push a bunch of video masters where they're going. But I think I think of it as a good sign that it's literally the data transmission across the wire that's the bottleneck, not labor on our part. And then we do incremental improvements. So when we have student projects, we with attention to the ethics of using student labor as like free labor, like all of us are get kind of grossed out by unpaid internship type of work. But we try to reintegrate stuff into the archives. We try to get, we have a lot of classes that come in, we get students to interact with physical objects. They then interact with the digital surrogates. We recruit them to give us things like object descriptions, stuff like that, transcripts, whatever it might be. Those all feed back in, and we just kind of slowly refine and grow all the collections as we can. And it's done as well. So that's all I guess that's the high level overview of what we do and how we do things. I definitely have like lots of I'll share the slides, and I have lots of like link lists and tip sheets and primers I've used with my graduate assistants and stuff. So I'll open it up.
Awesome. That's great, Patrick, that you're willing to share all that, and thank you. Um, and I'll kick things off with a question. I'm curious how, like, when did you start working at Middlebury? I can't remember if you said
Fall 2015.
2015. Okay. Um, so you kind of inherited a mess, or not mess, but like you did a lot of things to change
Yeah,
procedures,
I
right?
was my position was a new position, and I inherited, the scattered pieces of lots of projects from other people, I guess.
Gotcha. But I'm curious, like, did you have to sell your director on making any of these big changes?
Sort of. I think the director of special collections is she's a unique person, awesome, and pretty open and forward looking, and likes to do new and challenging things. So it was easy working with her. And the basic idea was an easy sell, because this is why they made the new position. They wanted to be starting to work in this area. Um, but I definitely have spent a very long time getting pushback on things like using Internet Archive rather than some other type of paid
Yeah.
preservation engine or repository software. And that's one that I've had to answer for lots and lots of times. And I guess my responses are always kind of the same: of we pay $0 per year to use Internet Archive. Um, it matches really well with our values. Nothing about our use of Internet Archive is different from what anybody with an internet connection gets. We all use individual accounts that are attached to our work emails. We have a little, over the years, we've developed a little bit of a personal relationship with people there. They know I work for Middlebury College, and maybe will answer my emails more quickly than somebody off the street. But I feel like that's an experience that everybody with an edu email address gets.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, saves us at least 5 figures a year in hosting costs. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was sort of what I was curious about. Yeah, like, just in terms of, I'm sure that that could be a challenge, making that case. But like you said, if you're saving the money and you've got the I'm impressed to hear that you're able to get indexing of your collections there, set up for DPLA and even
yeah,
EBSCO and JSTOR. I didn't know that was a
yep.
possibility. So
Internet Archive does provide OAI-PMH. They serve as an OAI-PMH endpoint, so that's how
yeah,
all that works. People get really nervous about free. They really,
yeah,
really do. I mean, I go, well, what if Internet Archive decides to start charging money, or what if they fold because they're not sustainable, or Brewster dies and they don't have enough of an endowment? And they've been doing this since 1996.
yeah,
Find me a repository vendor that's existed since then, and you'll be hard pressed.
yeah.
Um, but it's my fanboyism.
I think it like speaks to like the importance of having an exit strategy for anything
Mhm.
that you use, any platform, because, like, yeah, not everything is going to be around forever. So
Yep. Um,
Jamie has her hand up.
yeah, Jamie.
I'm wondering if you could just do a quick screen share and show us what the collections look like on Internet Archive, just so we can get a feel for it.
Absolutely.
And I want to hear more about the stuffed poodle that y'all have.
I don't know. I don't actually know about the stuffed poodle. That has not been. I guess we haven't 3D scanned it yet. So if I go to our main Internet Archive collections page, a few caveats here. Stacy, you talked about exit strategies. Whether it's exit strategies or facilitating use, nothing really beats Internet Archive, because all of the item records have easy to resolve URLs that are consistent. Everything, including things like collections, are treated like an item, like it's got a kind of object-oriented structure. So for things like direct links, or I want to batch download all of the videos with this metadata tag, something like that. This is stuff that anybody can do really easily. So it's technically accessible, but it's definitely not pretty, and it has an intimidating interface. But this is our main collections page. We have a few specialized ones. Mostly they're thematic. We have like our digital lecture archive, which has stuff from our media services department that was rescued off of a server that was being an old real media server that was being decommissioned. That's a lot of lectures that were recorded. There's also a big dump of bread loaf readings and lectures from the Bread Loaf School with a bunch of major authors that we got. So it's great. You get streaming video. We're working on trying to get annotations, time-based annotations in on some of the videos. I don't know when that'll happen. And yeah, this is so what can I use as an example? Postcards those always look nice. So basic image collection is our historical postcards. Clicking on an item, we get a viewer. These for images, these can be carousel viewers if you have more than one image associated with an object. Also, relationships are always many to many in IA for records. So any given item can be part of multiple collections. Collections could be sub-collections of multiple collections. There's it's just node graph-based linkages. There's no necessary structure there. And then we have item records. So you can see this is in our couple collections, and then also Internet Archives, the Internet Archive curated American Libraries collection. And then similar views underneath. I think all of those are to other items that we have. So this is a really generic kind of metadata record pulled from our content TM description. So somebody wrote that out, just a couple basic keywords, don't have a date on it, and then physical information. I want to show one of the from the page transcripts, because when Internet Archive deals with printed text items, it does have built-in ABI OCR or text items, and it can be hit or miss, but it does us no good for our handwritten collections.
I was actually just going to ask you about the transcripts. So
yeah,
awesome.
So there's two. This one is transcribed. There's two. Oh, that one's not transcribed. I'll find one that is. Two major reasons to have the transcript. One is for human readability. Obviously, one is for machine readability. So you can make handwritten text keyword searchable. So when we bring transcripts back into the collections, we put them both in the full text download, and then we'll also put them in a transcript field and paste the full transcript copy in there, because that lets it show up, lets us do full text searches from metadata. I know there's about half of them are transcribed and half of them are not. So this one has a transcription on it. So I have transcriber credit for whoever did it. These people are Middlebury staff. When we are bringing things in from the page lets us export the usernames of people who have transcribed it, so that they get crowdsourced transcribers get credit for their work in the record. And then this is just a pre-formatted HTML pre-formatted loop that goes into the metadata field. Internet Archive uses Dublin Core as its main metadata standard. It has a couple extra extensions that it uses for its own technical metadata, but it also allows you to use custom metadata fields just by including them in a record. it's so the metadata elements are arbitrary. So when we decide we wanted a transcriber and a transcription metadata element, I just use that as a column header in our upload spreadsheet, and it gets added to the record, and Internet Archive displays it like it does any arbitrary metadata. There's a mistake here that you point out. There's a this is trying to OCR the handwritten text. You can turn that off. I forgot to do that when I upload this one, apparently. Then we add in a few other notes as standard, and this is all just stuff that gets filled down in a column on a spreadsheet. Our language statement with a link to our statement on language and cataloging. A note that the text option will deliver you to a plain text file containing the transcript. Yeah, so that's what the records look like. The reader is usable.
And you said you've had students in different classes do some of the transcription work?
Yep, we have one American Studies professor who does a lot of work on Civil War era things, who's done head classes transcribe letters and then comment on them or do comparative work with them. And her classes have been a big source of the transcriptions, but really it's from the page has a great user community, and they just I've been amazed. I think I could find the numbers, but you know, we're getting pennies on the dollar kind of transcription labor compared to what we would even pay student workers. And we get a lot of great feedback, and people, you know, the community also, they're seeing, like, they'll point out mistakes in our metadata records. They're from the page allows them to tag you know, named entities and subjects, and that feeds back into our records. So that's a really cool service. It's really affordable too. I mean, I think we pay, it's definitely like low four figures for us. And we're in you know, we have a institutional account that lets us pretty much put up as much as we want. So
you do get people who are not affiliated with Middlebury who contribute then?
yeah, hundreds.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, there are some people who are just like really into history and like really like to transcribe stuff. So
yeah, and I'm a little bit, we're a little bit spoiled in some ways in terms of like the I don't know, the attractiveness of the stuff we're able to offer. You know, the Breedlove School and all the stuff from that is major 20th century American writers in all genres. We have the Flanders Ballad Collection, which is this like incredible collection of folk song recordings from the early 20th century. Our earliest ones are on wax cylinder, and then it goes through until she's recording on reel-to-reel tape. And so that includes, you know, years of
I see
hundreds and hundreds of songs, and people love this stuff. So
oh, sorry for interrupting.
oh, no worries.
Tara has her hand raised, and then Kristen. So we'll let Tara go first and then Kristen.
Hey, Patrick, thank you for this. It's I work at an art museum, and we have a fledgling digital collections effort underway that's not necessarily part of me, but within the library. And we're also using Internet Archive for our front end. So yeah, we were kind of like, should we be doing this? It's okay. I don't know. It feels weird, but it's been going well. But I wasn't sure. There is no limit. Like Internet Archive doesn't put a limit on how much stuff you can put in. So that's what I thought. I just wanted to double check.
No, they don't. And they're actually, we've been beta testers they have a proper digital preservation service that they'll be launching when they get around to launching it. I really like it. It's comparable so far. The feature set looks like Preservica Starter.
Wow.
The simpler versions of Preservica. I think I don't know. I hope they're able to do what they want in terms of being cost competitive, because they have this infrastructure for this huge data sets and preservation, and don't have limits. So they might be able to undercut a lot of the vendors out there. So
yeah, I know that's something that we know, it's a little bit on our radar, so kind of waiting to see. Do you have an idea of the time frame for when they might release that?
I don't know. I think they're trying to do it this year, but who knows? The really exciting part about that though is them building in functionality with archive.org, so that for those of us who have tons of stuff in Internet Archive, it should give us more control over how many times, checksums are run, what geographical areas things are stored in, how many copies are stored, and give us good reporting on what they're actually doing in terms of verifying integrity and all that stuff. So
cool. So did you put Born Digital stuff in there as well? Is that right? Like some of those recordings and things?
Yep.
Do you have, what about like institutional records, like that are not AV, more text things that you can make available? Do you put those?
We sure do. We do. Where would I find most of that stuff? Probably if I just search for digital in the metadata record, maybe. We definitely do. A lot of them are stuff we get via Google Drive or via OneDrive share links. So like when we're collecting a student group's records, that will, some of those will be confidential for FERPA reasons. Their rosters and stuff get held back for online use only. But we ask them, almost everybody agrees to share things like, copies of the flyers they've had or that they've made and put up, stuff like that. Their promotional materials, their public outreach things. And those we will typically export as a JPEG or TIFF or whatever's appropriate, and add those. The Born Digital workflow is pretty much the same as the digitization workflow, except that it uses a different Google form for people to submit things, and it all goes into like a Google Drive storage bucket for triage. And then we kind of break it out over, one of the questions on the form is, should we upload this to Internet Archive, full stop. Because the only people using it are special collection staff. And so if there's a yes flag, then it goes on the same Internet Archive upload track as everything else. If it doesn't, then it goes into a different bucket and then gets sorted to where it needs to go in the dark storage. But there's not a big difference between how we treat that type of content versus anything else.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Kristen, you're next, and then Felicia has a question.
Hey, Patrick, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for sharing and for your presentation. It was really great. I had a question about your dark storage, and specifically, do y'all do any sort of, you mentioned that you do redundant backups. Do you do any like fixity checking on monitoring, and how is that done? Is that done through IT?
We do. Not as much or as regularly as we want to. The quality of our preservation measures are lacking more for the stuff in dark storage. IT does for their own operations. I think they have 3 redundant backups. They run fixity checks on everything to see, it's all, their side's all automated. But they put lots and lots of effort to maintaining file integrity or data integrity. But I will also, since 2017, new things that get added get bagged before they get put into the dark storage. So we have, and I've retroactively done checksums, run checksums for stuff that's in there. I audit them maybe once a year. But that's kind of a manual audit on my part. I mean, I run a bash script from my computer to run through all of the checksum files it binds and validate.
Okay.
And validate them, once a year, and it's as like kind of command line manually kludged together process as it can be right now. And that's kind of because we're holding off on we really want to get a either Preservica or the nascent Archive at Vault
Mhm.
thing to replace this storage backend for our dark stuff. That's our ultimate goal, is we would like that to be in like a really simple preservation bucket somewhere. We don't really have the capacity to automate all of that right now.
Mhm.
And most of that's because of the last time we did, I had set up an automation for all of it, but the way that tiered storage works in terms of less frequently accessed data being, storage being charged at a lower rate for less frequently accessed stuff, made it so that anytime we want to check integrity of a file, it brings it back into the frequently accessed tier. I got a very pointed email from IT telling me never to do that again.
Oh,
So
no.
we've been working on getting a replacement for that, and probably it looks like now it'll probably be a consortial solution at some, through with our DPLA partners, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Felicia?
Hi, I enjoyed your presentation also. I have a question about Internet Archive. Have you all ever had any loss of anything that you've uploaded
No,
before?
no, nothing's been lost. I know from other people that Internet Archive will not always let us know if something is taken down by them due to a DMCA request. I'm not confident that if something did go missing, that IA would inform us. I'll put it that way. Just because I don't know, but we've never had anything go missing or be corrupted.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, downtime is rare, and usually there's advance notice when they're doing maintenance and stuff. It gets slow sometimes, and their response time to like support requests and that can vary. I mean, sometimes it's 24 hours or less, and sometimes it's a few days, but so goes.
Okay. My next question has to do with archiving your social media pages for your students. Do you, when you're archiving those, are you only archiving the tools that you use? Are you only archiving the post itself, or are you archiving the comments also?
So when we're doing social media feeds, we will archive comments if we can. The biggest barrier to that tends to be whether we can. Like some will just get ones that display without clicking the see more comments link on them. Sometimes it won't. The tools differ in what they capture between Archive It and other tools. But yeah, we do keep everything under the premise that text is cheap in terms of storage and it gives context. So we definitely don't want to lose conversations that happen. The other part I'll add is when we do that, we will only collect things that are public and publicly visible to users that aren't logged in, unless we have an agreement with a student organization or something. We talk to them and say, hey, we know you have a private group here. Can we actually preserve this? And so we have a few of those that are closed groups or are things that are set for we have where we will be logged in and preserving them and get a different and more kind of complete view of the activity on the feed. But yeah, we do tend to get everything we can because we get everything we can. It doesn't because there's not a big impact. Video is the one place where we have to be a little bit more selective about what we keep.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Well, we're 1 minute to the hour. So are there any other questions? If not, then I just want to thank Patrick for joining us today and giving a wonderful presentation. I thought it was really great and helpful for me too. So
And
thank
thanks so
you.
much. Appreciate the
And
invite.
And yeah, and you guys just, you have Patrick's contact information, and he's willing to meet with you one-on-one to do consultations and just talk to you about your projects. So, don't hesitate to hit him up. 'Cause I'm sure he'd love to meet you.
Absolutely.
That's it. Then I will stop the recording.